Caitlin Clark's switch to jersey number 17 didn't come from a lack of preference. It followed a deliberate decision to leave number 22 completely unassigned at Team USA camp. That's a rare move in basketball, especially when the number is tied so strongly to one of the sport's biggest rising stars. Clark transformed 22 into a symbol, selling out merchandise, dominating highlight reels, and becoming a magnet for fan engagement. But instead of continuing that association, Team USA has placed the number on pause. The message? Her presence is too culturally loaded, too commercially powerful, and perhaps too disruptive to fit within standardized team protocol. By opting not to assign 22 to anyone, Team USA isn't just avoiding a clash of player preferences. They're navigating the larger challenge of managing legacies in a hyper-commercial era.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
Clark's popularity has redefined what it means to wear a number, turning it into a brand in itself. The organization's response shows a careful attempt to walk the line between respect and regulation, between recognizing cultural impact and maintaining operational control. The jersey might be blank, but it speaks volumes about the new realities shaping elite sports institutions today. The jersey was iconic. The number was everywhere. And then, just like that, it was gone. Team USA made the stunning decision to remove Caitlin Clark's number 22 ahead of training camp. And what followed wasn't just confusion. It was outrage, speculation, and an immediate cultural flashpoint. Because this wasn't a minor swap. It wasn't a casual reassigning of digits. This was the sidelining of the most recognizable number in women's basketball right now. One that had been directly linked to the biggest breakout star the game has seen in years. And the twist? No one else got it either. The number wasn't given to another player. It wasn't passed down. It was left unclaimed, hanging in limbo on a roster filled with elite talent. Everyone got a number, except 22. That detail alone turned this from a routine jersey decision into a symbolic move with real implications. To understand the weight of this, you have to start with Clark's influence. Over the last year, she didn't just dominate on the court. She redefined what visibility, marketability, and star power look like in women's basketball. Her number 22 jersey became a fixture across college arenas, fan merchandise, and social media. It wasn't just associated with her. It was her. A shorthand for record-breaking stats, viral moments, and a massive cultural following. So when Team USA stripped that number away and quietly left it unassigned, fans immediately knew something wasn't right. Clark didn't request a different number. She didn't hand it over to a veteran. She didn't get edged out in a team lottery. She was asked to wear something else. That alone makes this rare. But what makes it unprecedented is that her original number wasn't given to anyone else. It was essentially retired without being officially retired. And that's where the controversy begins. Because this isn't just a case of institutional logistics. This is about legacy, power, branding, and the evolving dynamics between player identity and organizational control. The reality is simple. Clark made the number too big, too visible, too loaded, and the system didn't know what to do with that. Historically, the number 22 has been worn by greats: Cheryl Swoops, Aya Wilson, Cameron Brink. But Caitlin Clark's era has brought that number to new commercial and cultural heights. It's been on billboards. It's been trending on TikTok. It's sold out across fan shops. Her number 22 jersey has outpaced most male athletes in college sports in terms of merchandise sales. It's not a number anymore. It's a brand. And that brand has now been benched by the most powerful basketball organization in the country. Team USA's reasoning? Officially, there isn't one. But based on how the roster was rolled out, it's clear that the decision to leave 22 untouched was deliberate. Clark was reassigned to number 17. Other players selected their usual numbers, and everyone moved forward, except the number that carried the most weight. It's not hard to connect the dots. This move wasn't about availability. It was about containment, a quiet attempt to avoid centering Clark's persona too heavily on a roster stacked with veteran stars. An effort to maintain roster clarity and control the branding narrative within a team-first system. And that's what makes this so revealing, because it exposes how sports institutions still struggle with a modern athlete's rise in power. The moment a player's identity, number, name, merch starts to rival or outshine the brand of the team, the system gets uncomfortable. This is where individual significance runs headfirst into institutional tradition. And in Clark's case, she didn't just cross that line. She blew past it. She became bigger than the jersey. And the result? The jersey got pulled from rotation. What makes this even more complicated is that Team USA didn't replace her influence. They didn't hand number 22 off to a veteran or reserve it for future use. They erased it. They ghosted it from the roster, as if the presence of that number alone created too much noise, too much attention, too much potential disruption. And here's the irony. They've only made it more powerful, because now, number 22 has become the symbol of this tension. The empty spot on the roster says more than any assigned number ever could. It says, we see your influence, but we're not ready to center it. It says, we respect your impact, but we're not going to let it reshape our system. That's not just a roster management choice. That's a cultural decision. It's a reflection of a deeper issue across women's sports: how to reconcile athlete-driven branding with organizational structure. Because in 2025, athletes aren't just players anymore. They are platforms. They are media properties. They're CEOs of their own identities. And Clark is the clearest, loudest example of what happens when one athlete becomes a movement. Organizations now have to ask themselves, are we building systems that empower those movements or systems that suppress them? In this case, the answer feels pretty clear. And it raises another question. What precedent does this set? Because if Clark's number can be quietly benched after becoming one of the most culturally dominant symbols in women's basketball, what does that mean for the next breakout athlete? What does it say about how legacy will be managed when individual influence collides with legacy branding? We're not talking about someone who's asking for special treatment. Clark didn't make a public fuss. She wore number 17 and kept it moving. But the silence around the decision is what's so deafening. There was no formal tribute, no explanation, no roadmap for what happens next. And that silence left a blank space that fans and critics were more than willing to fill. The broader conversation is now unavoidable. As women's sports grow in reach, audience, and profitability, the players driving that growth aren't going to blend into the background anymore. They can't. Their numbers are selling too well. Their followers are too many. Their identities are too influential. Organizations have two options: adapt or deflect. Right now, it looks like Team USA chose the latter. But whether it was out of caution, respect, or control, the effect is the same. They've turned Clark's absence from number 22 into a louder statement than if she had worn it. They've turned that blank jersey into a symbol of where the sport is and where it still struggles to go. No matter how they frame it, the decision to leave number 22 off the roster is no longer just about a jersey. It's about who gets to own legacy, who gets to decide what symbols matter, and how much control an organization is willing to give up when a player becomes more than just a player. So what do you think? Was benching number 22 a respectful nod to Clark's dominance, or a strategic move to keep her growing power in check? Should players get to keep their iconic numbers when they enter elite spaces like Team USA? Or do team rules outweigh individual legacy? Like, if this decision rubbed you the wrong way, drop your take in the comments and subscribe for more breakdowns of the cultural battles shaping the future of women's sports. Because the number may be missing, but the message is clear. The game is changing, and number 22 isn't going away quietly. The absence of Caitlin Clark's number 22 isn't a minor jersey adjustment. It's a quiet, strategic shockwave, and the silence around it, deafening. In the world of sports, especially international basketball, jersey numbers change all the time. That's normal. But this wasn't normal. This was intentional. You don't take the most visible, highest-selling, most culturally loaded jersey number in women's basketball and just shelve it without comment. Unless there's a deeper motive. And there is. Because leaving number 22 unassigned wasn't about number. It was about power, about control, about who gets to shape the narrative when an athlete becomes bigger than the institution they're stepping into. Caitlin Clark didn't just wear 22. She made a movement. That number was tied to record-breaking college performances. It was part of the headlines, the top-selling jerseys, the social media explosion. It was on signs in the stands, worn by young girls in gyms across the country. Her rise wasn't just about skill, it was about symbolism, and number 22 was at the heart of it. But now, with Clark stepping into Team USA territory, where hierarchy, legacy, and institutional structure matter more than anywhere else, that symbolism became too much. The number didn't just represent a player anymore. It represented disruption, and Team USA doesn't do disruption. That's why the number had to go. Not reassigned, not quietly given to someone else, just erased. Because if Clark wore 22 on that roster, the spotlight wouldn't be on the team. It wouldn't be on the veterans. It wouldn't be on legacy. It would be on her. And that's a level of influence the system isn't built to handle, especially not from a 22-year-old newcomer, no matter how talented, no matter how popular. And here's the uncomfortable truth. This wasn't just about basketball culture. This was about institutional discomfort with visibility. Because Clark's cultural relevance didn't emerge within USA basketball. It emerged independently. Through college ball, through fan engagement, through a grassroots explosion of attention that the system didn't control. And now, stepping into that system, the first thing that happens? Her number gets sidelined. That's not a coincidence. That's a reset. By removing number 22 from the conversation, Team USA didn't just neutralize Clark's symbol. They sent a message to every other rising player watching. Your influence doesn't dictate our structure. You don't bring your brand into our house. And sure, some people will defend the move as a logistical decision. Others will say it's a nod of respect. But that argument doesn't hold up when you realize no one else was given a number. If it was about availability, someone else would have taken it. If it was about honoring her, it would have been retired publicly. But it wasn't. It was just removed, quietly, like the issue was too complex to confront directly. And by doing that, they made the controversy louder. Because when you erase something without addressing it, you leave a vacuum, and the culture fills that vacuum fast. Fans noticed instantly. Media outlets picked up on the shift. Social media lit up, not because Clark was wearing a different number, but because the most iconic one was left empty. It didn't feel like a coincidence. It felt like an edit, a carefully orchestrated one. And the thing is, we've seen this before, just not in women's sports. Not this publicly. In men's leagues, superstar branding has long been a central part of the business. Think Jordan's 23, LeBron's 6, Kobe's 8 and 24. Their numbers became the brand, and the leagues embraced it. They profited from it. They built around it. But when a woman athlete hits that same level of recognition, that same level of branding strength, it suddenly becomes too much, too loud, too risky, something to manage. That double standard, it's been sitting in the background for years. Clark just exposed it, because there's no way around this. Number 22 meant something huge. It represented an entire shift in how we think about player branding in women's sports. And instead of owning that shift, Team USA moved to contain it. Why? Because in their structure, the team comes first. And when a player's identity starts to overshadow the team, even unintentionally, that becomes a threat to the hierarchy. It disrupts the traditional chain of legacy, where respect is earned over years, not through media buzz or jersey sales. So when Clark showed up with a number that meant more than just digits, it meant cultural dominance. They didn't know what to do with it. And instead of integrating it, they set it aside. This decision wasn't just about now. It was about precedent. Because if Caitlin Clark wears 22 and the spotlight follows her, not the team, not the program, it shifts how Team USA operates. It signals to future stars that your identity, your brand, your movement can come with you. That the institution will adjust to your influence, not the other way around. That's not a message they were ready to send. And that's what makes this situation so defining, not just for Clark, but for the future of women's sports. Because the debate isn't about numbers. It's about ownership, of identity, of legacy, of cultural relevance. And the system, right now, is still playing defense. The decision to leave number 22 unassigned wasn't neutral. It wasn't respectful. It was strategic, a soft reset disguised as a policy move. And the result? A firestorm that's far from over. Because fans see it. They see that Clark wasn't just demoted in number. She was symbolically stripped of a part of her rising legacy. And that legacy, to them, matters. It's not just about who's scoring points. It's about who's changing the game. And let's be honest, Caitlin Clark has already changed the game. No number swap can undo that. So, where does this leave us? With a rising generational star wearing a new number not because she wanted to, but because the system wasn't ready for what her old one meant. And with a national team that now has to navigate the fallout of a cultural decision they weren't transparent about. The conversation won't go away. The fans won't forget. And number 22? It's still trending, even though it's missing from the court. What started as a quiet jersey switch is now a public referendum on how institutions treat influence they don't control. And Caitlin Clark, whether she asked for it or not, is now the face of that conversation. So what happens when the next star emerges? When another jersey becomes a movement, will the system embrace it or shut down again? That's the real question. And how they answer it will define the future of athlete power in women's sports. Let's keep going, because this conversation is far from over. Caitlin Clark didn't say a word. She didn't protest. She didn't challenge the system. She put on number 17 and got to work. But her silence doesn't erase what everyone else already saw. A quiet power move by Team USA, executed under the radar, but screaming with subtext. They didn't just assign her a different number. They vacuum-sealed the number 22 and locked it away like it was too dangerous to touch. And the most ironic part? In trying to deflect attention, they created more of it. Because now the conversation isn't just about jersey numbers. It's about who gets to carry legacy and who decides when that legacy becomes too loud. The story behind this decision reveals more about the power structures in women's sports than any headline could. This wasn't a rejection of Clark's talent. Team USA clearly want her on the floor. It was a rejection of the symbolism that follows her. It was a clear line drawn between what she represents and what the organization is willing to embrace. Let's be brutally honest. Caitlin Clark is not just a player. She's a symbol of change. A new media ecosystem has been built around her, one that didn't come through the league or the USA basketball pipeline. Her popularity didn't come with permission. It came with performance. And that kind of influence, especially when it comes with massive fan engagement and commercial traction, unsettles the traditional playbook. Legacy institutions, especially ones as buttoned up as Team USA, thrive on structure. They like order, hierarchy, earned ranks. You play your years. You make your mark. You wait your turn. But Clark's ascent didn't follow that path. She skipped the line, not by asking for special treatment, but because the world chose her first. And now, they're trying to course correct. But instead of evolving with the moment, Team USA chose silence. They removed the number, said nothing, and hoped it would go unnoticed. It didn't, because you can't erase a symbol once it's been adopted by the culture. Caitlin Clark's number 22 isn't just stitched on jerseys. It's etched into this chapter of women's basketball. Removing it from the roster didn't cleanse it. It elevated it. It added tension, mystique, meaning. And now, more than ever, number 22 feels like it's bigger than the team that chose not to use it. And that's the point. This wasn't about one player. It's about a system that doesn't yet know how to handle player-powered legacy. The WNBA, NCAA, and now Team USA are all dealing with the same challenge. Athletes who bring their own spotlight, their own audience, and their own narrative. And they're doing it in real time on platforms where institutions no longer control the messaging. Fans follow players now, not logos. And when a player like Clark becomes the moment, that power dynamic starts a shift. That shift isn't comfortable for institutions used to being the center of the story. Let's break it down even further. Leaving number 22 unclaimed doesn't just avoid confusion, it avoids the conversation. Because if Clark had worn it, it would have sparked questions about hierarchy, marketing, fairness. Why did she get it? What does that mean for the veterans? Is she already the face of a team? Is Team USA pivoting toward the Clark era? And maybe the organization didn't want to deal with that yet. So instead, they left it blank, like putting tape over the mouth of conversation that was already screaming. But here's the thing, they can't mute the moment. Because Caitlin Clark is the moment, whether she's wearing 22 or not. And the symbolism goes both ways. Fans didn't miss the visual. A team filled with seasoned professionals, veterans, and legends, and one young phenom wearing a number she didn't choose. It read like an institutional statement. We'll take your talent, but not your iconography. And in doing so, they proved just how iconic that jersey already was. You don't sideline something unless it has power. And number 22 clearly does. That's why it wasn't handed off or casually reassigned. It wasn't just taken from Clark. It was taken off the table altogether. It sends a message, intentionally or not, that some forms of influence are still seen as a disruption. That becoming too big outside of the system, too famous, too marketable, too fast, is something to be managed, not celebrated. But here's where that backfires. This is the new era of sports. Players are the brand. They're the platform. And when an organization tries to dilute that, fans notice. They speak up. They organize. They were the number anyway. They post about it. They keep it alive. Because fans aren't loyal to systems. They're loyal to stars. That's why Clark's number 22 lives on, even if it's not on her jersey. It's still in the stands. Still selling. Still trending. It wasn't just a number. It was a signal. And signals can't be unlit. This whole scenario has now become a blueprint for what happens next. Other athletes coming up, especially in women's sports, are watching closely. They're seeing what it looks like when your brand becomes bigger than your uniform. And they're asking, will the system support me? Or try to shrink me? And organizations are going to have to make a choice. Because this won't be the last time a player shows up with massive cultural equity already in hand. If the system isn't willing to embrace that, it risks alienating the very talent it needs to survive. Women's sports are evolving fast. We're seeing unprecedented attention, money, and media. But if institutions can't grow with their players, they'll get left behind. Players like Clark have already proven they can bring the audience without permission. The question is whether the system can bring itself to meet them with respect. This number change isn't going to fade quietly. It'll follow Clark throughout her Team USA run. Every camera will pan to her jersey. Every announcer will mention the swap. Every post will reference the missing number. Because silence doesn't erase history, it amplifies it. And here's the twist. The number may 22nd not be on her back right now, but it's everywhere else. In fan signs, in tweets, in protests, in headlines. The decision to suppress it has only made it louder. So what started as a quiet adjustment has now become a defining moment. A test. For Team USA. For women's basketball. For every future player who walks into a room already carrying a legacy. Was removing the number worth it? Did the organization protect the integrity of the team or undermine the individuality of its brightest new star? And most importantly, what happens next? Because Caitlin Clark isn't slowing down. Her impact isn't fading. And the number 22? It's not going anywhere. If you've been following this jersey controversy, hit like. If you've got thoughts on how organizations should handle iconic athletes, drop a comment. And if you're here for the real stories shaping the future of sports and culture, make sure you're subscribed. Because the game has changed. The rules are evolving. And the next time a jersey goes missing, the silence might not be enough to stop the conversation. In fact, it might just be the spark.